Hello, welcome to the Wasting Time podcast. I'm just a solo host today. It's me, Chris. There's Nick wasn't available to record an intro, so I thought I'd just push ahead and do one myself. So I will keep this as brief as I possibly can. So we will get into today's guests very shortly. Before we do so, just want to give a shout out to the band I'm working with. I mentioned them on the last episode. They're called Sharp Eyes. They're from Essex. They have a great sound. They have a new single out. It's called Past Your Best. The chorus will stay in your head for days. Go and check it out now. If you haven't heard these guys, you will not be disappointed. So today I had G'Ra and Rihanna from the band Baby Got Back Talk. I've been listening to this band for a while, ever since I saw that Wiretap Records were working with them. I love both their recent EPs. We had Wince Repeat last year. I think that came out, and the year before there was Existential Shred. I had both on repeat when they came out, and I continue to listen to them. G'Ra wrote a piece recently for the Boston Globe. This was called A Rollicking Rebuke to the Idea That Rock Music Isn't Black Music. This is a pushback to the actions and comments of Rolling Stone co-founder Jann Wenner. And this was basically because he neglected to interview any women or people of color for his book, The Masters. And when he defended this decision, Wenner claimed that when it came to the philosophers of rock, women and artists of color just didn't articulate at that level. Baby Got Back Talk have put together a mixtape full of artists to show that Wenner's argument was nonsense. To go along with the mixtape and the essay, the band's also releasing a new song and a video. Sadly, that's not out at the time of recording this, but do keep an eye on that. So follow them on their socials. If you Google Baby Got Back Talk band, you'll find them everywhere. And I promise it's worth doing. Okay, let's jump into it.
Thanks so much for having us on.
Yeah, no worries. You guys been on my radar for quite some time now, so it's good that this has come together. Do you guys just want to just quickly introduce yourselves and say what you do in the band, perhaps?
My name's G'Ra Asim. I sing and play bass in Baby Got Back Talk.
My name is Rhiana Hernandez. I sing and play synthesizer and play in Baby Got Back Talk.
Rhiana, I think you were just saying like you guys are in the New York sort of area.
So fun fact, I'm in the New York area and a majority of us are here, but G'Ra is in St. Louis, Missouri. So he's a little, it's not like he's not on a coast, so he's bistatal, I call it.
Okay, so how often are you guys like able to meet up for like practice and stuff?
I think we do most, or they do most of their rehearsing without me.
Really?
Yeah. And then, we'll have like a quick tune-up rehearsal before gigs. But I think it was the kind of thing that when I first moved down here for a job, I thought I would be coming back like a couple times per semester.
Yeah.
And then sort of turned into like a couple times per month as the band's momentum and demand for us to play shows is kind of accelerated.
I see. And you're an English professor, is that right?
That's right.
And what about yourself, Rhiana? What do you do outside of the band?
I am a cannabis pastry chef.
Oh, wow. Okay. Varied occupations. G'Ra, I was just reading the Boston Globe article that you wrote recently. Yeah, it just came to my attention literally in the last hour before jumping on this call. How did that come about, man?
So the band and I have kind of been talking for a few months about doing something that a multimedia project that would be partially responsive to Rolling Stone co-founder Jann Wenner's comments about his book, The Masters. That book came out in September. He kind of got in hot water for saying women and Black folks can't articulate at that level or act as philosophers of rock and roll. And we thought we would probably do something to kind of push back on that or complicate the public conversation on that. But we wanted to do it around Black History Month. So we sort of started plotting, if you will forgive the Machiavellian verb, in like September. Obviously, the Globe article came out about a week and change ago, but we still have another sort of arm of that multimedia project. We recorded a new song, shot a new video, and we're looking for people being able to read the essay, check out the mixtape we created to accompany the essay, listen to the song, watch the video, all in one place on our website as a kind of like, as I mentioned, multimedia project, all under the banner of Baby Got Back Talk, articulated that level.
In terms of the mixtape, Were those all those artists, obviously, you know, you talk about that a lot in the essay, but are they artists that you were familiar with beforehand, or is it kind of within this conversation you kind of discovered them, or is it a mixture of both?
So funny enough, I want to say we almost personally know all those bands.
Really?
Whether we've performed with them, whether they're on our label, which also lets us perform with them, or just kind of like having them within the local community. Punk rock and hardcore scene here in New York is pretty really tight knit. So we were able to not only include folks that we knew that could like speak at the same level that we wanted to, articulate at that level that we knew that they could, but it was almost hard to like. It was just we just knew so many folks, if that makes sense. Like I almost picture
Okay.
it as like we were so inundated by it that we were kind of like, how could people not know about these people? So it was easy to choose.
It's funny, like look, like I'm familiar with a handful of those artists. I'd say I think Action Adventure is the only one we've had on the show before. If I'm
Oh, word.
correct, but
Cool, yeah.
a very cool band and very cool guys. Moving away from that a second, I noticed another cool thing that happened to you guys recently. Adobe Rising Artist for 2024. That's a nice little bit of exposure. Do you know how Adobe kind of discovered you guys?
Do you know, Reed, like what the point of entry was for them? I don't off the top of my head.
I know why I think they found us, which
Okay.
is because we're amazing. But I don't know if I know exactly how that connection was made, and I'm just gonna kind of run with it that they literally just organically came across us and we're like, holy crap, these guys are groundbreaking. And if nobody knows about them, like how will we live? And that's my canon event. I'm grateful either way for such a feature, because that's it really made the rest made the end of my year and made us, I hope, feel more spurned on to continue doing the damn thing.
The way we kind of do these things normally is like keep it like a loose structure of like kind of going through someone's career and like keeping it chronological. And obviously, I'll kind of want to ask you things like at different points, but can we just kind of like take it back to the early days a little bit? Can you guys just tell me a little bit individually about kind of the music you both grew up on, maybe some earlier bands you were in before you guys came together, and just a little bit about what your history is?
I've been classically trained musically, like in terms of like my first instrument was a violin that I started really, really young, like third grade. The bands I listened to were 90s grunge, 90s punk, lots of metal, Disturbed. What else? Gracious. Lots of POD, lots of Nirvana. Linkin Park was a big one. I know that G'Ra always makes fun of me for it. Um, and it's funny, I wasn't in a punk band before joining Baby Got Backtrack. I always wanted to really know how violin would fit in that,
Yeah.
and just kind of kept it adjacent. And it's funny, we actually have a mutual friend that put us together, and that was how I basically joined my first punk band, was joining Baby Got Back Talk, which is so surreal to say out loud. Like, it's exciting. Like I could only be so lucky to have a band be this tight and do so much and be my first one.
Yeah, no, that's worked out well. What about you, G'Ra?
When I was a kid, my mother ran a theater company in St. Louis, and she produced a lot of musical theater, actually.
Okay.
And it was kind of like a DIY situation where she wrote, directed, produced, sewed costumes. And so like my early days, when my mother would pick me up from school, before we would go home, I would just be following her throughout the city while she wore all these different hats, producing independent theater. And I think I kind of I got interested in songwriting partially through watching her stage musicals, but I also just sort of took in this DIY ethic of like working with whatever is in hand, using the material limitations of a given situation as like opportunities to flex the creative muscle. And I think when I ended up discovering punk rock later on, probably in middle school, the ethos of punk felt familiar rather than alien. It felt very resonant with the kind of approach that my mother took growing up.
Yeah.
And so I think because I sort of felt that nexus, whereas I was always interested in like jazz, R&B, hip hop, disco at various times, punk was like the first musical tradition that made me feel like I could actually contribute to it. Felt like the bar was a bit lower in terms of like mastery of the instruments or vocal mastery. And it's something like, I think I formed a band when I was probably 13 or 14, didn't know how to play music really at all, and kind of learned by doing. And by the time my 15th birthday came around, I was like, trying to barter with my parents to let me have a show in the basement to celebrate my 15th birthday, where my horrible and embarrassing first punk band played.
Okay.
And I kind of just never stopped doing that. And Baby Got Back Talk is just the like least embarrassing, most cogent, and most accomplished iteration of that.
Okay, got it. And you guys formed about I guess about 7 years ago now, something like that. Is that about right? So when the early versions of this band came together, like what artists were you listening to at that time? And in terms of your sound, were you like, okay, we want to take influences from these particular bands? Like who were the main ones for you guys?
I think the first year of the band or so, we were really trying to discover what our template was. It was definitely a collision of Rihanna's influences, my own, and our founding guitar player, Jake Lazaroff's. And Jake was kind of someone who, he and I had like a real overlap in terms of like Fearless Records bands, Drive Through Records bands.
Nice.
Kind of screamo and emo sort of stuff. Rihanna mentioned some bands that they were into as a child, which, like, for instance, Linkin Park. I never had a Linkin Park moment. So I think when we first started collaborating, we were trying to figure out like what is where are the sort of conjunctions in our tastes. But we used to also kind of have this joke where we were like, if we weren't forming a band in the Trump moment, we might sound more like Busted, the English boy band.
You don't want to sound like them.
Well, I mean, that's the extreme example. But
yeah.
Coming together at that moment in the social and political climate, we were sort of like triangulating between Busted and the now disgraced Anti-Flag.
Right. Okay.
That remains true. That somewhere on the spectrum between those bands, we landed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All jokes aside, yeah, completely get what you're saying there. So what were those first few years like in terms of show? Did you get on any tours in those first couple of years, or was it all kind of like playing local shows? Like how did you guys kind of build up your following in your local scene?
Wow, it's a mix, because I know we did a lot of local shows, definitely around like the Lower East Side area. Spots like the Delancey. There was another area around there. There was this place called Fat Baby. Like this kind of like around that little like pocket of spaces where there are a lot of little punk clubs. And it was a lot of local shit, a lot of little bars at the time. But I definitely feel like the acceleration in popularity was really quick. We did Afropunk about like in 2019, 2 years later, and then we did Punk Island in 2018. So I guess considering we went from like 2017, we were starting, 2018, we did like our first like local festival. Then 2019, we've got Afropunk, where one of my favorite historical moments happens at Afropunk, but I don't want to tell it. I want you to tell it because he's best at it. But the early years, I can't say we did much touring. I think our first tour came around 2020. We did like a California stint at Gilman Street, which was our first tour. And then COVID hit. Literally, like we were on the plane. Kobe had just passed away. We were coming back, and they were still just making jokes about Corona. So, and then our second tour we just had in November. That was a nice little upstate tour, and that was probably, in my opinion, I thought that was fun because it was longer and more recent. But as time progresses, as time has progressed, especially from between like our first starting and now, I know there was like, we first started a little bit of a push 2020 on, I guess, being more diligent about what we're thinking about, how we're putting everything out, the kind of projects we're working on and putting together. It just kind of, it's starting to be a comfortable, but very much noticeable increase in notoriety, which I like.
So go on. What's the Afro punk story that you alluded to there?
Oh, well, I think it kind of ties back to your earlier question of what were some foundational bands that led to our genesis. There was a moment where I thought after I started the band when I was in grad school at Columbia and living in New York for the first time. And there was a moment when I finished where I thought I was going to do more grad school at the University of Kansas. And while I was kind of being recruited to start a doctoral program there, I happened to connect with a professor who happened to be best friends with Blake Schwarzenbach from Jawbreaker, who is a really formative influence for me as a songwriter, as a lyricist. And so while this professor, her name's Betsy, shout out to Betsy, she rules, couldn't make it to Afropunk 2019 that year. She happened to tell Blake that we were playing, and she told me she was going to tell him, but maybe it just seemed too surreal to think of, for me to think very coherently about it. But I didn't realize Blake was coming to see us play until we were on stage like mid-set. So just imagine playing the kind of glitziest show to date in the band's career, and then just like looking out into the crowd, seeing some people moshing, and then in between those people moshing, the lead singer of Jawbreaker just like bopping along to the tunes. And when I first made eye contact with him, I was like, maybe that's just some dude who kind of looks like the Jawbreaker guy.
Sure. Yeah.
And then he kind of like gave me the nod, like, yeah, it's me. And I sort of froze up. I kept singing, but I stopped playing bass, and it was like kind of silent for a good 20 minutes as far as or 20 seconds as far as my amp. Yeah. Which was like, that was probably our, we came up moment, I think.
Okay.
Where it's like, this is the real thing.
That's when shit got real.
And then just going back to talking about 2020 and obviously the pandemic slowing things, because your full length that came out in 2020, right? Was that during whilst the pandemic was happening, or did you get that out just before?
That was right in the middle. Like we were actively going over different like listening to stuff still and going over versions of things and trying to put it all together. Like I think it came out around July. So we were definitely doing that in the heart of Zoom meetings, Facebook meetings, lots of group chats, and it was tough. And then I guess to know that it had to be something that was released, and obviously our first full length, to know that it came out during pandemic was tough. I guess keeping that in mind, it was like a double-edged sword. Like, yes, it had to come out in pandemic and it sucked. We also had that time to almost like build within the community that we had. So we were doing a lot of online things like movie watches and different kind of like little promos to kind of keep ourselves within the community as a whole. And I think that also was a big that resonated with some folks, which I feel like kind of helped now like build the community we have currently.
How do you guys feel about that album when you listen back to it now, I guess going on for 4 years later? Has it helped? Because obviously you've put out a lot of stuff since. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's a timely question. I think, and I will take full responsibility for this, I think my bandmates would have stopped me if I wasn't so headstrong about this. But looking back, I think we definitely could have held off on releasing the album in the very thick of the pandemic.
Okay.
And because we, in hindsight, kind of jumped the gun, we did get back in the studio and revisit some of those tracks, which we'll be releasing as singles over the next couple of months. The diehards, the people who've been rocking with us from Jump are familiar with Genre Reveal Party, but most of our listenership at this moment are folks who kind of got on board when we signed with Wiretap and we put out Essential Shred.
Yeah, and I would fall into that category for sure. But like, obviously, I mean, not just in the interest of knowing that I was talking to you guys, but just out of curiosity, when I first knew about you, I went back and listened to stuff, and like, yeah, genre reveal party, like, there's some really, really strong songs on there, but like the production to me doesn't sound obviously it's not as strong as your later stuff in that respect, so I'd love to hear some of those songs redone. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Between those sets, we had moved on to work with John DeClario up at Not a Recording.
Yes, I'm familiar with him. He actually mastered an old band of mine. We had a record, we needed someone to master it, and we knew about him, and he did it, and he just did an amazing job.
Oh my gosh, you already know.
Yeah.
No, shit.
In fact, I'll tell you a fun fact. So the theme song for this episode, all our episodes, is from that EP. So he actually mastered that. And I had to reach out to him recently because I wanted some of those. I didn't have the instrumental versions of some of those tracks, so I got him to do them again. So yeah, top guy. I was talking about him with another label yesterday, actually. So yeah, go on, tell me, how did you end up working with him? Was that through the Wiretap connection, or was that through your own thing?
Well, we had this kind of weird situation, I think, where in the genre reveal party moment, we were sort of still figuring out, like, are we a band that's going for a rougher hewn DIY sound?
Yeah.
Or are we going to lean into a more polished sound?
Yeah.
And we sort of had some feedback from some like industry people that was like, yeah, right now your band is like, you sound like a band that hasn't decided whether you're going to indulge your pop instincts or if you're going to like hang on to this like ambling around in the garage sound.
Yeah.
And we realized we needed to get off the fence, so to speak. And John had done a bunch of records that me and Jake actually grew up on. And that had an impact. I was familiar with him because of that, obviously, I was like a big Census Failed kid back in the day. I really dig Midtown. But it was actually my friend, John Brown from the band Brighton Early. He was also in a band called The High Court, which had like kind of a lot of popularity in the scene I used to be in the DC area. Okay. But he kind of swore by John DeClario and was like, if y'all are trying to get off the fence in that respect and kind of want to strengthen some elements of your band, like, this is the savantish figure that you need to team up with.
It's funny when you mentioned your friend from Brighton Early, I was just like, yeah, I know that name. And I remember the thing that really drew me to them back in the day. I remember they had a cover of Stupid Kid by Alkaline Trio that was on one of those Pacific Ridge records. I think that's how I first knew about them.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to them for a while. So tell me, how did Rob Wiretap get involved with you guys?
If I'm not mistaken, please correct me, G'Ra. I think he found us. He did it. It's going back. So he had reached out or made some kind of Twitter post. On his end, he was like, I want to see Black, Indigenous, queer, people of color, like different looking bands, not the typical bands that you're seeing outside. And I want people to send them our way now. So I'm almost positive G'Ra sent it to me and said, we need to reach out to this guy or do something. And I said, and we did. And I think we even directly reached out to him and said, hey, we saw your post. Here we are. What you gonna do? Yeah. And we were very lucky. He did take us on after a couple of conversations. We did, we signed on. That's when we got to both release Existential Shred and also kind of meet the other folks that we got to feature in our mixtape, which was huge.
Yeah, it was a little bit rom-com-ish, I would say, ending up with Wiretap in the sense that he was kind of looking for us. The Twitter thread that Rhi mentioned, the band Sundressed actually was like, oh, Rob, you should look up Baby Got Back Talk. And at the same time, we had just gotten mastered tracks of Existential Shred back from John. And I was like mailing every label on the planet. And Wiretap was already on my list. So Rob had heard about us and was curious. And then when he went to his inbox, he already had tracks from us. So it was like very providential.
Yeah. It was meant to be. Yeah, Rob's a cool guy. I was working with one of his bands. I mean, still friends with them, but yeah, I talked to Rob a lot, and I think He does a lot for the scene, that guy, and he definitely has an ear for picking up artists like yourself, but like good bands out of nowhere.
Absolutely, he does. To say he does a lot for the scene is probably an understatement, and I appreciate what he's done for lots of other bands that I wouldn't know about without Wiretap, and obviously, what he's done for our band is kind of the cherry on top.
Any other Wiretap bands that you guys are into that you've particularly been impressed with?
Yeah, as well as some Wiretap adjacent bands. So
Go on.
we dig this band Penstock, who I assumed were on the label for a long time, but I've just been on some comps. Rundown Creeps are our homies. They're on my Grito, which is kind of the sister label. I really like the band Tiny Stills, who did a couple records with Rob. Man, I can't think of their name, but it's that band that's like I'm a Cortisol Factory. Hold on, I'm gonna look them up. Oh, Odd Robot. Yeah, I dig them as well.
A few you mentioned there that are also on the Articulate at the Level mixtape as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so once you kind of had Rob on board, released the EP via Wiretap, did any interesting tours kind of come out of that period at all?
We did the one upstate. We basically we were in Troy, we were in, oh gosh, I forgot the other two towns, but like further upstate where we basically like organized we did like a whole like 3-day tour around there.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that was probably our most recent tour. G'Ra, do you want to correct me on that?
No, I was just gonna say we're not a band that has done much touring. You see our faces a lot in the kind of New York metropolitan area, but most of our reach seems like kind of word of mouth, people supporting us on the internet.
Okay.
We are hoping to get out more broadly this summer, but so far that hasn't been kind of the primary means by which we spread the gospel.
Okay, fair enough.
We're very much one of those like hole in the wall places, and we want to be viral and have people line out the door.
Yeah, and I suppose in terms of like what you've got planned for this year, obviously you mentioned, so you've got a single coming out to kind of accompany the essay and the mixtape. Are you able to kind of disclose when we can expect the single, or is that still being worked out?
We don't have a hard release date yet, but it'll be in the next week to 2 weeks for sure.
Oh,
okay. Who directed the video for one of our earlier singles, Model Minority, worked with us on this video as well. And we're just excited to kind of close the loop on this multimedia project and kind of see, what the fan or user experience is of just like experiencing the same message communicated in 4 different mediums. It's something that, since writing is kind of my other main pursuit, it's something we want to continue to fool around with, like using prose and punk in ways that are mutually reinforcing.
What about other plans for later in this year? Have you got any other releases coming up or booked on any shows? Like, obviously share what you're able to share.
A couple releases coming out. We've got a few months of singles that'll be rolling out, as G'Ra had stated earlier. And I know we've got a couple shows like in the works. It's still kind of earlier in the year. We did do a lot of preparation in terms of like assembling our little media constellation setup with the re-recording and music videos and everything. So now we're definitely just kind of ready to get back on the stage, and maybe even consider touring. We'd love to do it outside of New York tour. So if anybody wants to tour with us, we travel well, we're compact. We're fairly polite in large group settings, but we definitely would love to go on a tour, especially around the summer. Definitely may continue to be, oh gracious, I had the word and it's gone, but just continue to be thoughtful about the kind of things we record, maybe even get back in the studio at some point. But
okay,
it's the possibilities of this year are truly endless, which is really exciting considering where we're at right now.
What else are you guys listening to at the minute that we might not have talked about?
I've got Olivia Rodrigo's Guts on repeat for a few different reasons.
Oh yeah.
One, obviously, I'm just into it. But two, I've actually been making lessons out of a couple of the songs on that record,
Really?
just to kind of typify some English department-y concepts. And since I've been teaching that stuff this week, I've been like finding myself going back to the record for pleasure as much as for research.
Okay. How have those lessons been received?
It's kind of too early.
I'm excited to hear it.
I think that it's like yeah, it's one of those things I won't really be able to assess whether the kids like picked up what I'm putting down until some term papers are due. But
okay.
it was fun to even just see some eyes light up when you kind of draw something that seems extrinsic to the subject into the classroom.
Yeah, aside from Olivia Rodrigo, anything else? But well, from either of you.
I just discovered that there's this group called I'm very into I like rap, so I just discovered Zach Fox, who is also on that show Abbott Elementary, and he plays like a not good like rapper, and then I discovered on a random baking one day he just popped up on my feed, and I'm like, oh wait, this guy who plays a bad rapper is actually a good rapper. So it's been Zach Fox and lots of Japanese metal music.
Okay, that's an eclectic mix right there.
My playlist goes really crazy. It could be rap music, then a classical piece like Dance Macabre, then all of a sudden it's just screaming in another language, which you need variety.
That's true, and that definitely ticks the variety box. So who's the dream tour for you guys for Baby Got Back Talk? Who's going on that dream tour with you guys? Who's the other three artists? I mean, I appreciate it might be different answers for both of you. So if you both want to fire some artists, like you don't have to confer. I'm interested to see what both your choices would be.
I think first pick would have to be SZA, which we discussed as a band a bunch of times.
Yep.
SZA is actually a St. Louis native. And since we're kind of like working in some St. Louis aura into our burbling cauldron lately, I think that would be a neat overlap there. If you want to pick a complimentary act.
Complimentary to SZA. Snap. It's tough, but I guess after her feature on Drake's song, I want to see what it would be like to tour with Sexy Red. Don't give me that thing.
Wow. Way to bring
I want to know what that would be like. But also, another band who maybe like more in the realm of what we do. I kind of want to. I've seen them a lot. I know you and I saw them live at Europe, but I'm kind of interested in touring with the Lindas. They seem like they would be so much fun.
Yeah, doing very well at the minute.
They're super young. Every time I see them, I'm like, okay, so like you go off. But I also see like, I don't know. I'm worried I sound creepy, but I'm like, damn, that's like me as a younger person. I want to say little kid because that seems to them. But as like a younger person doing the same thing that adults can do and doing a very good job at it, like makes me feel good. It makes me feel like the upcoming group of punk. And so, yes, I would like to be with them. I'd be their grandmother, but
let's go fully multi-generational then and make the last tour Bad Religion. So you've got like the generation older than us, the generation down, us, Sexy Red, SZA.
There we go. That is
one place.
One hell of a lineup.
That would be a music fest. People would come to that.
Have you guys ever been over this way? You got much UK experience? You ever been to this part of the world? I mean, I don't mean with the band. I mean, like just generally in your lives.
I was there in 2018. I'm going to be going back there. I'll actually be there in April. For funsies. I'm like really excited. I'll be. Oh, nice. I think I'm going to be like right in the middle of London. It's my first vacation in a long time, so I'm going to get there and
amazing.
I don't know, just live on Brick Lane, drinking mulled wine and stuff like that.
Sounds like it's the wrong time of year for mulled wine, but apart from that, it sounds like a good plan for sure.
Any recommendations? Send them my way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you would do well to be around East London for sure. Sorry, G'Ra, I thought you were going to say.
Oh, all good. I've only been in the UK once, but I have seen every episode of Ted Lasso, so I feel like that kind of counts, right?
Well, what about UK bands? You guys fans of many UK artists, kind of past and present?
I think the time I kind of belatedly, I guess I'd have to really think about. I feel like I'm more conscious of like what bands of non-American bands that are Australian than I'm conscious of specifically British bands, at least off the top of my head. Man.
Yeah.
What are some landmarks that you might be thinking of, Chris, that seem kind of resonant with what we're doing?
Oh, so that's interesting because, we could have just gone like with the unimaginatively just said the Clash or something like that. But if we're going to like talk about, I guess, like the kind of music you guys make, and certainly the music you said you came up on, like as in like Fearless and Drive Through bands, like, because that's the music I came up on as well. But that is mainly music out of America, but at the same time, lots of UK bands have kind of tried to join that kind of movement as well. And I think not particularly successfully for the most part. I mean, because, you've got like your Neck Deeps and stuff. And it's, I just think what's the point in just trying to sound American if you're from this part of the world. So it's kind of.
They have some bops though, but I get what.
Yeah,
it does feel like an imitation.
Exactly. I was just editing a podcast that we're putting out soon, and like I feel like I'm hard on Neck Deep every time because we were having a similar conversation. I was just like, oh, they pretend they're American, but yeah, that is fair. They do. They have some good bops, and one of my co-hosts was just saying the other day that their new record is amazing. I've struggled to get into it, but apparently it is amazing. But
I love that song. We Need More Bricks.
Okay.
I think it like really captures something that feels timely and urgent, but a surprising British influence on this band that I'd be surprised if anyone has ever picked up on it. But I am somebody who was like really activated by Frank Turner and just like the strength of this songwriting, marrying like a proudly punk sensibility with really intricate wordplay and storytelling. Yeah. When those first couple of Frank Turner records came out, I was like, oh man, I guess like, it's not just a matter of him like capturing punk energy with just his voice and an acoustic guitar. It's also that there's like a kind of seamless marriage of the folk sensibility with the punk rock sensibility that doesn't feel like a cornified version of either. Yeah. And studying how he puts songs together structurally and melodically has really, I think that influence really shows in kind of like the bones of what we're doing, even though the arrangement choices we make are really different.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, and like Frank is just a great kind of songwriter in terms of like storytelling for sure. And yeah, I could see that. Melodies as well a little bit. We've had Frank Turner on the show before. He's I don't know if you've ever crossed paths with him, but he's a really nice guy. In fact, he's the kind of guy like if you reached out and just emailed him and told him about your band and stuff, he would listen to it. Obviously if he likes it, he does. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But he's quite approachable. I think his email's probably on his website, so. You should. Doesn't hurt to ask. That's what I've learned over the years. But yeah,
got something to add to the task list.
Yeah, there you go.
Can you imagine getting an F report card from Frank Turner on the band? That would be. It's like, yeah, I'm approachable, and I did listen to you, and you suck. Have a good day. Don't try this at home.
I really appreciate your time. It's been cool to finally meet you both. I hope you can make it over this way for shows sometime in the not too distant future. Amazing. Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much for your time, Chris.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
Keep up the great work with the pod. We have listened to previous episodes. I know at least one other time you shouted us out, probably on when Moron came out, and we appreciate the love and you having us today as well.